This is the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. I'm Kevin Scholla in the Narrowgate Security Agency studios.
Schilling is not a bleeding heart liberal, and I believe that's why they cracked down on him. ESPN, just all around awful on this. They should have just stuck to sports.
When Major League Baseball great Curt Schilling tweeted a picture that included factual statistical backing regarding the percentage of Muslims that are believed to be extremists and Germans that were Nazis, he was suspended from his announcing job. Many kept quiet and hid, but Governor Palin stood up for the three-time world champ. Today, Schilling joins us to talk about that incident, as well as internet wackos paying a price for making lewd comments about Schilling's daughter. We'll also look back on his superb pitching career and ask Schilling if he belongs in the Hall of Fame. Bristol Palin gives birth to a beautiful baby girl. Christmas wishes from the Palins. A brand new installment of Liberty and Legacy with Tamara Colbert is on the way from Texas. And just ahead, our latest edition of Steel Resolve with Sarah Steelman in Missouri. Welcome to the Palin Update on Mama Grizzly Radio. The Palin Update is sponsored by Narrowgate Security Agency. Learn more at narrowgate.com. When the moments were biggest, this man came through. He went 11-2 with a 2.23 ERA in the postseason, and he has 3 rings to show for it. He is a 3-time world champion and perhaps a future, very near future Hall of Famer. We're happy to have the great Red Sox, Diamondbacks, Phillies pitcher Curt Schilling on the Palin Update. Hello, Mr. Schilling.
How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for being here. And so a big announcement coming in January, the new Hall of Fame class, and you, sir, are being considered. And, you know, most people I wouldn't even ask this because they'd give me a canned answer, but I think you're the right guy to actually pose this to. So is Curt Schilling a Hall of Famer, and how do you expect that vote to go next month?
I honestly, I don't. By my criteria, no, I'm not. I've always thought that Hall of Famers are people that you don't debate about. Obviously the Hall of Fame is full of people that you can debate about, but I always felt like a Hall of Fame was somebody looked at and went, yeah, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, guys like that. So, excuse me, I wouldn't. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's a challenge because it's not something I talk about, not something I think about for a second. Besides, when this happens, and so I didn't get any better from last year to this year. I retired 7 years ago, so I don't know how the vote totals change, but they do.
Well, your career just amazing, from your emergence with the Phillies and an NL pennant to your World Series team in Arizona, where you and Randy Johnson, who you mentioned, anchored that dominant staff, the whole mystique and aura. And, of course, your Red Sox career, 2 world titles, breaking the curse, the bloody sock. I mean, what an amazing ride. And I think that your postseason stuff, stands out to people who may not have followed you day by day. I want to ask you, though, and this may be baseball or it may be things that have to do with baseball but aren't really on the field. What do you miss most about the game as far as being in uniform and about those 3 cities you played in?
About the game, absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, nothing. I don't miss anything about baseball. I got to pick when I walked away, which a lot of people do not get.
Yep.
And I was ready. Don't take that as I didn't love it. I appreciate everything I was given. I owe the game far more than it'll ever owe me. But it was time, and I was ready. And so I don't. There are times when I'll feel a little pang, and it's usually the odd stuff. Like I'll see the starting pitcher walking out to the bullpen to get loose, and I'll remember though that was fun for me. That was kind of cool. I was in my own little world, or coming back in from the bullpen after getting warm, and standing on the mound before the first pitch and saying my prayer, whatever, little things, and those were mine, and I'll have those forever. So the game, nothing. It was amazing, and. That was. What was your second question?
Well, the 3 cities, being Phoenix.
Well, here's the thing. That I was born a big leaguer in Philadelphia. I mean, that's where my career started, for the most part, and I spent almost a decade there. Then I go to Arizona, which is where I grew up, which was special in its own right, and becoming a member of the first World Championship team in that city for any sport was an amazing experience. And then I come to Boston, and some goofy stuff happens, and all three of them were just amazing. In Baltimore, and Houston were kind of small pit stops, but both of them were impactful in my career and my life.
Well, it's interesting when you can unequivocally say you don't miss it, and I think it really, there's no mistake. You're a man of God. You're a family guy, and I think that's probably why you can say that. I mean, some guys leave the game, and the reason they miss it, to a point, where they can't get over it, I think is because, one, they haven't found Christ, and two, they may not have a stable family like you. I mean, you, obviously, it's all about those people you love.
Well, you know what? I don't know why I don't miss it. I just know I don't. And my faith is, I worry about what would have happened. I wonder, I guess, more than worry, what might have happened to me had I not had faith in God to do. 'Cause I know probably over the last 10, 11 years of my career, the amount of times that He stepped in to my life was some of the most pivotal moments of my career. But yeah, it's what you said. I had family. I told my kids, and I talked to my young boys and talk about character and integrity and pride, and everybody has chinks in their armor, and that's what makes us. Us. And the only perfect man to ever walk the face of the earth died a couple thousand years ago. So it's okay to make mistakes. And the sport taught me so much. And one of the things I pass on to my boys or my kids is, you can never fail something. You only fail something if you quit. And this baseball, being what it was, taught me a lot about wins and losses, but so much more about life. And it's funny, I played 20 some years of professional baseball and probably played with thousands of teammates, and everybody thinks that it's this glamorous, amazing Hollywood life, and it's hard to explain otherwise. There's some being on the mound for 2.5 hours every fifth day is energizing, but it's those 21.5 hours and the other 4 days in between, you're working your ass off, and it's grueling, and and if you're going to be good, I always felt I didn't appreciate what I had and what I did until after I was done, because I didn't have time when I was doing it. I was in the moment, and I was worried about the next start. And fear of failure for me was an amazing motivator.
Well, we have seen, obviously, from your answers, to say you've transitioned nicely is an understatement. So now we know if you see a Bartolo Colon maybe throwing in his early 40s, you're not going to get an itch at all. At least to maybe throw in the backyard, maybe, Curt, when you see that?
No. Well, I coached my daughter.
There you go.
I coached my son in high school and some summer ball, and that was enough. I had fun, and there were times when I was probably 43, 44, where I thought, maybe that winter I was going to mess around, and I thought about coming back a couple of times just for a half season, like some of the guys were doing at the end of their careers, like pitching for a half year, and I felt like I had too much pride in what I did. I didn't want people to remember me for something other than what I was as a player.
Now, earlier this year, you were unmercifully attacked by liberals and social media, cowards really, for a post you put up regarding terrorism. You featured a graphic that included the words, it said that only 5 to 10% of Muslims are extremists. In 1940, only 7% of Germans were Nazis. How'd that go? And then you tweeted with that picture, the math is staggering when you get to true numbers. Now, to me, it seems that should have been followed by a lot of amens and also a discussion. Instead, you were penalized for it. Governor Palin had me on TV to talk about it. I wrote a Breitbart piece about it. It was during. I remember it was during a busy week too. And I said, it just when things bother you, you got to sit down and defend against the nonsense. Were you surprised? And what did you think of Governor Palin and others who at least spoke out in support of you?
Well, first of all, like any true Alaskan, she stuck together. Us Alaskans always are tight, and I absolutely appreciated, her vocal support. But here's the thing. When you work for, a lot of people came out after that and said, what happened to freedom of speech and all this? My speech wasn't impaired. The freedom of my speech was never in question. But when you work for other people and they make rules and you break them, you get in trouble. And one of the things that is very clear in an ESPN contract is that, especially for me, they want me to talk about baseball, and they want, when I'm talked about, to be talked about baseball. Now, if I was on Pardon the Interruption or some other show on ESPN where, on the table was politics and all this other stuff, then I'm sure it would have been welcome. But I knew And Terry Francona used to tell us at the beginning of spring training, he'd go, okay, guys, here are my rules for the season. You know, if you think you're screwing up, you probably are. Don't do it. And I knew the second that I posted, well, I didn't know the second, about 30 seconds after I posted, I thought, you know what? That probably, it wasn't the right forum to post it. I didn't disagree with anything I posted. It wasn't the right forum. And I was going to go back on to delete it just because I thought, you know what, let me do this. If I'm going to do this, let me do this on my Facebook page where I can talk to people about it. And I was on an airplane taking off to go to the Little League World Series. And when I tried to log on, we had just gotten into that nebulous area in the air where you can't get online. And I was like, okay, this is probably not going to end well. And we got back when I got into to Pennsylvania and landed. It was nuts. And then and everybody was talking about. The problem was everybody was talking about a tweet I never made.
Right.
You know, everybody that referred to that tweet said I was comparing Muslims to Nazis, which is not true. But that's what you do. The media will do that. If they can omit one word from a quote, they will do it to create a story. And that's exactly what happened. You know, they took the word extremist out, and when you take the word extremist out, it changes the entire comment, changes the context of everything in it. You could argue that that's the most important word in the tweet. But you know what? Did it shock me? Absolutely not. I mean, those things can't shock you. I mean, given what we know now and what we're watching now, what we're seeing now from a media perspective, I choose to dig and root around and get my own information. And it's out there to be gotten. If you truly care about something, you can find out the truth, and you can't use one source to do it anymore. And so, you know, when she came out and voiced her support, obviously I felt I've been a fan of hers forever, and you know, I watched that same media you're talking about destroy or try to destroy her and her family by lying, by saying that she said things she didn't say, and in her case they kind of added words to some of her comments and quotes to make her seem stupid, and that was disheartening. And then when her daughter came out and had all of the events in her life, there was no holds barred from what they would say and do to her, and that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, but it made me ready and aware of the fact that there's a massive agenda at work, and all you have to do is flip around the channels nowadays to see that.